to the RunnerX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Welcome back. Today I want to talk about what is called unconscious competence. And I think I've mentioned it I know I've mentioned it with the podcast with Valerie, but I want to kind of really go into what it is within the Tough Love Tuesday idea and what it is within the mindset. So there is like a bell curve to how you learn anything. And you start with what is called conscious incompetence, okay? I know that I can't do, let's say, Muay Thai, which is a form of martial arts. So I am consciously aware that I am incompetent to do Muay Thai, okay? The next phase, maybe I go to a karate studio and I decide to, or Muay Thai studio, and I start to learn, and I start as a white belt, and I begin to learn the basic fundamentals of the movement that I need to understand for learning Muay Thai. That would be possibly how to throw a correct punch, how to block a punch, how to throw a kick. And there are different types of kicks. So I need to learn the standards of movement so that I can progress from being consciously incompetent to being consciously competent. Okay? So now I may be a yellow belt, if that is a thing in Muay Thai. I know it is in some of the martial arts that I've done. So maybe I'm getting a little bit more expertise. I've been doing it for a while, and I'm starting to become consciously incompetent, okay? So now I know what I don't know, okay? So if I said that right, and I'm going to have to check this, it's unconsciously incompetent, I don't know what I don't know, to consciously incompetent, where I know what I don't know, okay? So that second phase is where you start to realize that there are people that are better than you, there are things that you don't know yet, and you need to learn more. The third phase is called consciously competent, and that's where you basically start to learn, you start to see things, you start to know what's going on, you start to see, I liken it to somebody trying to throw a punch at you. When you're consciously incompetent, or when you're unconsciously, I should say, the first phase, when you're unconsciously incompetent, somebody can punch you upside the head and you had no idea it was coming. You didn't even know where it was going to land or what to do. Now you're in this third phase. You now can see that punch coming from the other person, and you might even know that you need to put your hand up and block it, but you have no idea how, and you can't move fast enough. But you can see it. You now see the punch coming. So the next phase after that is when you start to become unconsciously competent. So that punch starts to come around and you actually put up your hand and maybe you block it, but then you get hit by the other side. Okay, so how does all of this relate to running? Right now, if you're just starting to hear about Valerie and you're just starting to hear about RunnerX, you're just starting to follow her, you didn't know that there was a correct way to run. You were maybe even taught that there is a different way of running. You should do high knees and butt kicks and all those things that we were taught growing up. So you were unconsciously incompetent. You didn't know about gravity and muscle elasticity. Okay, you just know that your shins hurt, or it sucks after you've been running a few miles, your hips start to hurt. So now you start to follow Valerie, you start to listen to what she's saying, you start to understand, well, I know what gravity is, I know how it works, I understand that our muscles have the ability to actively engage and then actually react and have an active muscle contraction versus a reflexive muscle contraction, and that makes sense to you. You know a little bit about anatomy, maybe you lifted weights, or you understand the idea of ball of foot hops, and so you're kind of starting to get it. So now you're becoming consciously competent. You're starting to understand what she's saying. But here's where the frustration comes, and it tends to happen anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks in the learning process. where you can see why she's right in what she's saying. You can almost feel it. You think you've got the fall. You think you can feel it a little bit. You think you have it right. But then you find out that it's still hurting. You try to go for longer distances. You try to go from a 10-minute run to say a 30 or 40 minute run, and suddenly you're in pain. So now you are getting consciously, or you're now getting consciously competent. You know what you don't know, and you're starting to get frustrated, because this is the longest part of a learning process. This is what happens when you learn martial arts. This is what happens when you learn to draw. This is what happens when you learn to play the piano or the trumpet. And it's the longest phase that your kids go through if you have a child or have ever seen a child learn to walk, right? It's that I know that I can stand up, but I can only go a couple of steps and then I fall. And that's why they cry and they get frustrated. But you would never look at a kid and go, come on, you could do better than that. Chop, chop, let's get going. So why are you doing that to yourself? What we are hoping for is that you come into the membership, or you follow Valerie and you listen to what she does, and you keep practicing little by little every single day. And one day you will, if you are consistent in your practice, if you are consistent in building your habit, you will become what is called unconsciously competent. That's when you just go out and you run. You don't think about pulling. You don't think about falling. You don't think about if you're landing on the ball of your foot. You don't think about landing at all. You just go out and run. Okay? You don't think about your heart rate and all that other stuff. Put it akin to driving a car. When you first started driving, right? You had to hands at 10 and 2. You had to check your mirrors. You had to do everything. Now, how many of you possibly, try to pull up the GPS on your phone while you're driving? How many of you try to eat a burrito and drive with one foot? That's unconscious competence. And you didn't get that way after 1 or 2 or even 10 lessons in the car, right? You didn't get that way by running a simulation. You got that way by practicing, hours of practice, working with people, going into different scenarios, and you learned it by rote and by doing it over and over again. So that's what I'm going to challenge you this week in your mindset, is stop trying to rush the process. Stop trying to go out to do those multiple runs, and stick with the drills and stick with where you are right now, and let the process come naturally, because that's what's going to keep it and make it hold. That's what's going to make it last. And hope to talk to you next week. Thank you for joining us on the RunRx podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.